Hello folks, my name's David Edgar. I am the host of Heart and Hand Extra, the second show from the Heart and Hand team this week, where we discuss the events of the week and we look ahead to Saturday's game. Joining me tonight, because there's been a lot to talk about, is Pod Stalwart, Mr. Ian Hogg.
Good evening, David. Good evening, everyone, and pleasure as always to be here.
Now, I suppose the biggest news of the week, before we get to the game, with the implications anyway, is the announcement that Stewart Regan has left the SFA, or is leaving the SFA. He's decided to step down, and I suppose the question that needs to be asked, Ian, then is who will Peter Lawwell pick to replace him?
Well, I was actually wondering if Peter Lawwell will pick Peter Lawwell so he can deal directly with Peter Lawwell and maybe have Stewart Regan in at Celtic Park reporting directly to Celtic Peter. Yeah,
I mean, it can get confusing between Celtic Peter and SFA Peter at times, but I dare say he'll find some automaton who can go in. And all joking aside, Regan, I've seen some valedictory comments from people saying, well, you know, he made mistakes, but he always had the best intentions of the game at heart. And I just think back to 2011, 2012, and us being kicked to the curb, and as we're lying there bleeding, the SFA coming along and trying to throw salt into the gaping wounds, and think, no, I'm sorry, I don't believe that, I can't believe that. And I can't say I'm in any way sad that he's going, but I do wonder what the replacement will be like, and I certainly worry that it won't be anybody better.
There's certainly a better the devil you know worry, clearly. There's got to be better CEOs out there. Stewart Regan might have done a handful of things well in his tenure. Simply and certainly not to us. He didn't. I wish him all the ill fortune that life throws at him, and every shite to be a hedgehog. I've got absolutely nothing good that I want to say about the man.
Yeah, I think it's a bigger discussion for another day, but certainly I don't think any friend of Rangers can say, here was a guy who treated us fairly, and that was all we ever wanted, was to be treated fairly, and he didn't do it, or to get the help that another club in our situation would have got. And of course you're looking at illegal five-way agreements, you're looking at illegal sanctions being levied on the club at times we could ill afford it, you're looking at guys passing tests that should never have been passing tests, and you're looking at the game being run in this country for the benefit of one club to the detriment of all the other clubs, to the detriment of the standing of the game, the performance levels in Europe. You're looking at the technical director being Malky Mackay, which is a joke on every level, and the legacy, I don't know how anyone can spin anything to do with Stewart Regan, and it'll be the same when Neil Doncaster's time comes to an end. They can spin it in any other way as that they were put there by hook or by crook to do a job for one club, and they did it.
And so say all of us. Regan's gone, and I guess the thing that sums up his tenure fantastically well is he missed out on Michael O'Neill, ex-Shamrock Rovers manager, who's done very, very well with Northern Ireland, but he missed out on him because he couldn't persuade him to come and manage Scotland and bring Scotland back from the ashes. We are, as a nation, managerless just now, and Stewart Regan, having presided over an absolute downward spiral of the game in Scotland, now leaves us managerless and rudderless. Well done.
To Rangers, to the thing that we all care about. Let's go back to Fraserburgh, where last night Rangers played in the Scottish Cup third round and defeated Fraserburgh by 3-0. It wasn't a fun watch, but I suppose, Ian, you just, a night like that, you go, job done, move on.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. We won 3-0, so 3 goals, hat-tricks for Josh Windass, clean sheet, importantly no injuries, and even though we won 3-0, the manager's still not happy. All of that points to actually quite a good night at the office.
You, of course, have played at a decent level, Ian. What's it like on both sides of that fence, where you're playing a team of lesser ability and you know that you should win, that you can't really win the game, as it were, because you're expected to win. You're expected to win handsomely, and you're expected to do so with a bit of flair. And you know that anything other than a 6 or 7-0, really, when you just want to get the night done, how hard is it for players to motivate themselves to deliver a high level of performance in that situation?
So it's going to depend from player to player. Being a kind of more defensive player, I always blamed the forwards, obviously, because they were always in it for themselves, and therefore they had almost zero skin in the game to put themselves out against so-called lesser teams. That drove me personally mad, and anyone who played with me, certainly in the kind of latter half of my years, will testify to that. On the flip side, when you're playing against superior teams, you know that they're superior teams, the concentration levels have to go up tenfold. And again, it's something I found that I could do even when the legs had gone. But you're down to, fine well, one mistake and you're out the game, and that's when the kind of mood levels go down as well. So it's really, on both sides, it's really difficult, but it's concentration and desire really, really play the part.
Yeah, I think Rangers did enough, and as I say, it wasn't a spectacular watch. The pitch was appalling. It looked as though it had been ploughed. Fraserburgh can do about that. They're a tiny club, and they don't expect to be hosting teams of Rangers stature that often. I think with the exception of that little hobgoblin Celtic supporter who came on at the end and got sent off almost immediately, I think that any tackles that went in were either based out of tiredness or just being that bit slower and maybe looked a bit worse than they were. For Rangers, we brought in a number of fringe players. Did anyone play themselves, or could they? I mean, am I being fair here to say, given the state of the pitch, can a Halliday or a Cardoso, who didn't really impress, can they play themselves into the team, or is it a bit of a kind of thankless task?
It's a bit of a thankless task, but I don't think anyone in the team, and I mean really anyone in the team, did enough to displace the starting 11 from Aberdeen and Ross County going into the Hibs game. I don't think anyone did enough. Was the desire and will there and all the rest of it versus let's just get the fuck out of Dodge and win the game and not get injured? It was very, very evident from the way they were playing.
Yeah.
That was first and foremost in the mind.
Yeah, no, you're correct. Of the two sort of attitudes of let's go out here and show our class and get 8 or 9, or let's just win this game and avoid injuries, then yeah, you're right. It was definitely the latter. Highlights came from Josh Windass. Penalty for Rangers in the first half, which was, my opinion, a stonewaller. He puts it away confidently. Then second half, a really great finish. Go back and watch it again, folks, just to appreciate it. The first touch to set it up, and then the finish, terrific. Then a lovely goal with the third, where he out wide, cuts inside, drills it into the bottom corner. And okay, the opposition, right, caveat there, but Josh Windass is playing with a confidence, the penalty for example, that we haven't seen from him probably in his entire time at Rangers at the moment.
No coincidence that all this is happening after he cut his hair, of course, and stopped wearing a fucking Alice band.
Yes, 100%.
I think the real good thing about last night was Graham Murty after the game said, "Yeah, I know he got his hat trick, but he can do an awful lot better. He needs to be pushing up against the last man rather than coming so deep. He needs to be, if he's coming deep, he needs to be turning and driving at them in full flight." So it was nice to hear that, even though he got his hat trick. Keep his feet in the ground that wee bit. But in terms of his finishing, if you compare it to, just compare his kind of all-round performance last night to Ross County at the weekend, where personally I thought he was very poor. It was, again, there's night and day performances, and maybe contradict myself from earlier. That probably makes sure that he's in the starting 11 for Saturday.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think he would have been anyway. In all honesty, I think that he's currently a first teamer. I think he could only play his way out of the side, and I don't believe he did so with that performance at all. You're right, but I think the manager really does rate him, and clearly does see that more potential in him than even he's been showing lately, which is great. Music to the ears. Now we've come to the end of the transfer window. A lot to talk about. overall. But we'll start off with the most up-to-date story, which was, of course, the Alfredo Morelos to China saga. And news kind of surfaced earlier in the week that a Chinese club, who turned out to be called Beijing Rena, were preparing a bid for Alfredo Morelos. That Rangers had turned down bids of 5, 7.5 and 8 million for him. And that Graham Murty, from his interview last night, didn't seem best pleased by the whole situation.
Yeah, do you know, I think that there's a whole myriad of things to talk about here. One is Alfredo Morelos is clearly wanted, which is good. That means he's doing well for us. Fine. He's only been with us for 7 months. Personally, I want him to stay. However, if there's silly money being thrown around, we're not in a position that we can turn down nuts money. If it's upward of 8 million quid and he wants to go, then he goes. As simple as that. That would constitute a 700 to 800% profit after, I think there's a 10% sell-on fee.
Yeah, there is. There's a 10% sell-on fee to Helsinki.
But, you know, it would equate to a 700 to 800% profit on an outlay 7 months ago. You know, that's no-brainer territory. However, following that, the whole media circus that's been around it, which has almost been blogger-like and not Rangers blogger-like, it has been utterly bizarre to watch. It's you know, taxpayer-funded journalists going all out to be madcap Celtic tinfoil-wearing bloggers.
I would say not so much blogger-like as blogger-led, because, of course, straight away, rumours, you know, people make up stories and start saying, there's no way this bid is true, for no other reason than they just don't want it to be. And I said on our show, on Patreon, on the Daily Update, that Celtic fans have this fetish about their players being valued at a lot of money. I'm sure we all remember it's Agueri's a £10 million player, Rogic is a £14 million player, Boric back in the day was a £14 million goalkeeper. We all remember it. It's what they do. So they like it, and for some reason they got it into their heads that this was a positive story for us, which of course it wasn't, because, you know, we were worried we were going to lose a player and maybe not replace him. And now, because the country involved, their transfer window doesn't close for 4 weeks, we have 4 weeks where we're kind of worried that still could happen. So in no way was it a positive story. If Rangers were putting out stories to try and, you know, get the fans on side, they would have done so with targets, you know, guys we might be trying to sign. But the other fact that this of course ignored was that Rangers fans were perfectly happy with the window. We think we've had a really good window. We're very pleased. So if Rangers had said on Monday, absolutely no business, our fans would have went, oh, okay, fair enough, you know, and been quite happy. There was no desire or need to impress us. They had done so in this window. But because they cannot have anything that's positive about Rangers, and they felt this was positive wrongly because they're not Rangers supporters, Rangers obsessives but not Rangers supporters, they then say, well, these bids didn't exist, you made them up. To the point where BBC reporter Keradine Isidine, who's the guy who kind of follows Andy Murray around on Your Money, he says, spoke to sources close to Chinese club who say they've had they made no bids for Alfredo Morelos, and you know, they couldn't, even if they wanted to, because there's a levy of players of over $7 million. 3 hours later, he's forced to tweet, actually, there was, and, you know, I was wrong, and I retract my previous tweet and correct it. Rangers received multiple bids for the player from the club, and I was wrong. 3 hours. It's embarrassing, because there's no need for it. And where else, or who else, is probably more pertinent, do they feel that they have to investigate the minutiae of a transfer? And it's because you've got Celtic supporters, and I use the term loosely because they're not Celtic supporters or Rangers haters, who are saying things like, well, let's see the bids from the Chinese club. I'll put this as succinctly as I can to those people, because I know they're listening. Fuck off. You know, we're not going to do anything because you want us to. Right, go fuck yourselves. So It's a bizarre situation, but yes, to see the major broadcaster in this country, which the BBC are, going along with what is essentially a crazy element of the Celtic support's wank fodder is quite embarrassing.
Whilst at the same time ignoring the blatant lies of the manager of the other club across the city who brought in loan players. Remember, loans are bad.
Loans are bad, yeah.
Sorry, some loans are bad. Who brought in a loan player and then barefaced lied about him, and all of that's airbrushed from history.
Hoggie's referring to, of course, Roger's comment that their new signing, Charlie Musonda, Chelsea told him that Real Madrid wanted to sign him after he'd played for Real Betis, where he was on loan against Real Madrid. He's never played against Real Madrid, and it did take 10 seconds to check that out. So just a blatant lie. But of course, there's no BBC, nobody asks him about this, there's no investigation into it. But with one of our transfer dealings, there's a full investigation into it, calls to China made, and we are treated differently. It's as simple as that, and it's kind of embarrassing to see people who are supposed to be professionals humiliate themselves, which is what he did. And this is why when people say, oh, this is still going on between Rangers and the BBC, yes it is, because they won't behave in a professional, responsible manner, and they prove it time after time, Hoggy.
I'll go back to what you said about Stewart Regan. All Rangers want, all the Rangers support want is parity. For a publicly funded, neutral organisation, is anyone really trying to tell us that's parity?
No.
Absolutely not. It's in no way, shape or form. Can you imagine for a second the English arm of the BBC acting like that? Jesus, they would be hauled over the coals and taken to court before they could actually sign their own name against it. It's utterly embarrassing, and I do remember what you said about journalists up here and how they're viewed down in England, and if they don't make it to England by a certain time, that's them, they're almost out to pasture. You see that just, journalists up here almost get to a certain age and then realise they've not made it, and it's almost a case of, right, fuck it, behave badly. What's going to happen? I get paid off. I get a healthy bung, and it's maybe we make it too easy. Rangers are the easy target. No one goes after them, and that's really the bit, David, that has to change.
I think that what interests me again about this whole scenario is that it's basically, I think, a modern symptom where people can live in an echo chamber if they so wish, and they decide something is true, and Celtic supporters are particularly guilty of this, they always have been. They decide something is true and that's it, and any evidence against it is a complete lie, which you saw today with the fact they're lauding the original tweet and then they're condemning Isidine for his later retraction. Well, you believed him 3 hours ago, but you believed him because it was something you wanted to hear. Now, they're then saying, well, trainer made you do that. Look, this is the fucking BBC. When they think they're right, they will go up against the government. They will argue with cabinet ministers. The reason that he's been forced into that retraction is that Rangers have contacted the BBC. Their lawyers down south have looked at it and went, you better fucking apologise because we are banged to rights on this. That's what's happened. It's not been a case of Jim Trainor's phoned him and he's went, oh, I better retract that. And it's that sort of ability to construct a scenario and then never deviate from it that they have, that's unsettling, that's odd, that's obsessive, that's troubling, that's a sign of certainly at least some form of mental illness, in my opinion, because that's what obsession, of course, leads to. And it's a really sad reflection on the professionalism of the Fourth Estate in Scotland, because they should be above this. They used to be. They used to aspire to be, and they're not now. And in this day and age where things can be checked and checked instantly, it's embarrassing when you see the selective target, and I say target because it's one, and it's us who get it. There's a lot of stories. Celtic's weird three-way dance with Hibs and Dundee this week would have made an interesting thing to investigate, but of course it's never going to happen because they've got no interest in doing so. And of course what do? They go to a transfer at Rangers that didn't actually happen. And I think Rangers fans are wise to it now, I really do. But it's good to see the club, as you say, fighting back against it, because there's no need to just sit and take it.
No, there's not. And I think you've said before, David, that I think you put it quite well, that when you start at the outcome that you want to believe and work back from there, then today is the actions that you see. And it had to be challenged, and it has been, and I hope it will be from this point on. As you say, just last night, as the transfer window, Jim White, slammed shut, just beforehand, we had, as you say, that kind of weird three-way thing going on between Celtic, Hibs, and less so Dundee. I actually think Dundee are just caught piggy in the middle, where you had the only in Scotland would you have the bizarre sight of the Dundee goalkeeper pitching up to sign for Celtic in Hibs gear. and no one bats a fucking eyelid. That's how strange it is up here just now.
Yeah, and it's just an odd situation all round, but not one that, as I say, unfortunately, that we're not used to. So moving on though to a more positive transfer window story, which is of course Rangers, how they've come out of it. All I ask at the start of every transfer window, buddy, is that we come out of it stronger than we went in, and I certainly believe that we have done so in this window. I'm very happy with the business Rangers have done. I wanted Rangers to give us the opportunity to look forward to the rest of the season and push on, and I genuinely believe that they've done that.
Yeah, wholly agree. We've gone from what we thought was a threadbare, low confidence squad to adding Declan John. We've added, which is good. It converted the loan into perm. We got Greg Docherty at the eventually, having been told, of course, by Chris Boyd and all and sundry, just pay up because we keep on unsettling players. Interesting that Chris Boyd doesn't tell everyone else that.
Yeah, it's quite interesting.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I wonder why he's not mentioned a word about Trevor Carson, for example. But hey, what do I know?
Indeed. And Greg Middleton was signed for the youth development squad on deadline day. Add to that some loans in, a couple of which hopefully will be converted to perms. Sean Goss looks superb, I have to say. He looks as if he fits right in. Surprised how tall he is, surprised how strong he is. And my God, we've signed a player who can actually hit a corner kick.
Yes, that's a delight. But I agree with you about Goss. I think that he could well end up being a real kind of surprise hit, because he brings something that we didn't have, which is a bit of composure and passing from the middle of the field. I mean, I really like Jason Holt, I really like Ryan Jack. I know their limitations, however. Goss is something different. Goss is somebody who can get on a ball and then quickly make things happen. He's not somebody who gets on a ball and then plays it sideways and backwards for a while. He wants to deliver that telling pass, and that adds another dimension. Jason Cummings was a player we desperately needed, and I've raved about him. He's a guy I really like, and I think he'll score a lot of goals for us. But competition and or cover for Alfredo Morelos, and maybe a partner. A good attitude, the kind of attitude we've lacked, the kind of devilment that I think that a good side needs. And Docherty, box-to-box players. These are intelligent signings because they are something different. Russell Martin, okay, centre-half, we do have quite a few centre-halves, but again, somebody that's got that professionalism, the inspirational type. And you can see what Graham Murty's trying to do. And I think he's been given the opportunity that not many interim managers get to put his stamp on the side, which he's been able to do. And I think as well you're starting to see the Mark Allen influence at the club. I think it's slowly now becoming more visible, because I do think there has been a sea change where the directors who were maybe a little unsure at the start about the director of football idea. I think that they felt, yeah, we'll go for it, but they kind of kept their hand in just in case, and I think they've backed off because you can't do it halfway. You either do it or you don't, and you've got to, if you hired the guy to do the job, you've got to let him do the job, and I think this window suggests that's what's happening.
And we were quite vocal, you and I, David, a few weeks ago about Mark Allen, and was it not in his ability, but about whether he was allowed to perform what would be a director of football role. I think you're right, we're seeing that now, absolutely. We're seeing him working hand in glove with Graham Murty. We're seeing players coming in from England and Scotland, which, you know, players don't have to be from the British Isles to play for Rangers, but we needed that kind of core back. That's what we've got. You know, we've got players who are desperate to play for Rangers. First and foremost, they want to play for us. They're going to be hurting if they're not playing for us, and they're going to want to prove points. I think the one that we haven't mentioned is Jamie Murphy, who it felt as if he would walk over broken glass to get up here. I
think so, yeah.
You know, and here he is. We'll sign him permanently in the summer. It's got all the makings of a great nucleus for a squad, and I'm just really hoping that we can now kick on and string a few results together.
Moving on to Saturday's game then, Hibs, and Hibs will be without their best player, John Beaton, so a blow for them straight away. They have signed Scott Allen, who won't be sold to Rangers, I'm told.
Damn.
Yes. My idea was to put in a bid for Scott Allen from Dundee and then drive him down to Ibrox and at 11:59 just go, nah. But didn't want to do that, unfortunately, but it would have been funny. But Hibs coming. Now, we've had 2 matches with them this season. The 3-2 game, which we should have won, would have. The 2-1 game, you could argue they probably were a bit unlucky in. So the teams have shown, Hibs have shown that they can raise their game against the Old Firm. To be fair, against both halves of the Old Firm. It's going to be a right ding-dong game and a really good testing ground for these new players and for Graham Murty. But, you know, that Murty has shown he can deliver in these big matches.
Yeah, he has. And what I want is a performance similar to probably the first hour against Aberdeen, where we pressed from the front and we pressed them really high up and we forced them into playing it long. And after a wee while, until the last 10 minutes, that's all Aberdeen had. And they created next to nothing. If we can do that and also get in the face of the ugly face that is of possibly the most overrated midfielder in Scotland, although he is very good. How he's in the Scotland squad is beyond me, John McGinn.
Explain that then. In all fairness, you've just said he's very good, but he's overrated. So, you know, just explain. I think I know what you mean, but just explain it.
All right. He's very good in Hibs terms, but I think he's lauded as if he's the next great box to box midfielder. He's almost lauded as if he's Graham Souness. He plays for fucking Hibs, and Hibs can't get rid of him. You know, and he's if John McGinn played for Rangers, John McGinn or anyone else in Scotland, bar Celtic, John McGinn would not be in the Scotland squad.
No, he's Ryan Jack.
I genuinely believe he's not as good as Ryan Jack. So he's a good, decent player, but he's lauded way beyond his ability. He always raises his game against us. He's almost like the kind of Hibs version of Ian Jess. So I'm fully expecting he'll be up for it. We get in his face and we stop him and Dylan McGeoch from getting the ball in the deck, and Rangers win the game. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I think that's the key battle, because I think Hibs feel that if McGinn's having a good game, that they will do well in it, and that's fair enough. You know, everyone has got a key player or a talisman or whatever, but I think conversely with Hibs, they also feel, and you can kind of see that with them, that if he's not dominating the midfield, you can almost see the rest of their side start to second guess themselves and play with, you know, not play to their full level. And I think that's why the midfield will be key for us. Now, Jason Holt has been playing, I think, really well lately and has gone up a level. And a point that was made to me that I'd like to kind of discuss at the moment was you could see the difference, Hoggy, and it's a little unfair, but Andy Halliday the other night and Jason Holt, that somebody said to me that Jason Holt has gone up a couple of levels from the Championship side and Andy Halliday hasn't, and that's the difference. And there's a bit of me that's going, yeah, I can see that. Jason Holt's not a world-class player. Jason Holt's not, the greatest player we've ever had, but he is better than he was. And he's even better this season than he was last season. You can see the development within him in a way that you can't with Halliday. What's your thoughts?
I think with Halliday, the unfortunate thing that we've done with the guy is bring him back and then play him as a defensive midfielder last night. So therefore he's trying to stride out of the midfield, and we've seen for the last however many years he's not a defensive midfielder.
We were saying that in the Championship. The fans were saying that in the Championship.
Yeah, and yes, we're only playing against Fraserburgh. I get it, but Fraserburgh Razor game. It's a crap pitch, and so on and so on. Andy Halliday has played all these days as a left back, or more often than not down south as an attacking midfielder or a wide left midfielder. We brought him in, and from day dot, because Mark Warburton largely didn't know his arse from his elbow when it came to the defence, Andy Halliday was in there from the start, generally alongside Jason Holt. Now Holt is playing alongside, I would suggest, a better calibre of defensive midfielder, and therefore he's got the licence to just go forward and roam a little bit, and he knows he's got that protection. When Andy Halliday and Jason Holt play together, they almost cancel each other out in terms of improvement, if that makes sense. And I think that's why we've seen Jason Holt get better over the past. He's how many times did Ian Crocker tell us that Jason Holt's played the last 16 games in a row? We've seen a run of games with better players. Unsurprisingly, Jason Holt looks a better player. I would imagine that we would see the same from Andy Halliday if we afforded him the same luxury. But I doubt Andy Halliday's going to get that. I suspect he'll be the rest of the season predominantly on the bench.
For me, Andy Halliday can be useful to us coming off the bench when we need to shore up, I think. But I agree with you, he's not an out-and-out defensive midfielder to be one of the two. And you would then say, well, okay, he needs an opportunity further forward, but there's not really a role for him further forward, because I suspect Saturday will line up with Jamie Murphy, Josh Windass and Daniel Candeas in front of the two and behind Alfredo Morelos, or possibly even Jason Cummings, depending on the becoming the modern curse of post-transfer blues, which Riyad Mahrez is currently undergoing, and you never know if although Morelos was travelling up last night, his Instagram feed was fine, so hopefully he's good and raring to go on Saturday. He's good record against Hibs, 2-2 against them, so there doesn't seem to be that opportunity for him, because he's not going to get in the side ahead of Jamie Murphy, is he?
No. And he's not going to get in the side ahead of a Windass, a Candeas. I'll suggest right now, even at more kind of defensive-minded midfielders, he's not going to get in ahead of Holt or Goss. No chance. And that's with Ryan Jack and Graham Dorrans to come back, etc. So Halliday's going to be a squad player. I think he'll be quite a valuable squad player, because you're right, he can play a number of positions, and fine well he's going to play those number of positions for half an hour and give absolutely everything for it. He's not going to be one of these guys that kind of warms up by almost Nico Kranjčar style, by wiggling his ankles, and then gives kind of half-hearted performances. So he's going to be a good guy to be in there. I just don't see him starting between now and the end of the season, maybe unless it's against Ayr United.
That front four I mentioned, that's what I think we'll line up with. What's your thoughts on it, and would you make any changes to that?
I would make no changes from the team that played against Aberdeen and Ross County, simply because they've won 2-2. They lost a goal that shouldn't have been given against Ross County, although arguably the first penalty claim should have. And I think they've earned the right to play against Hibs on Saturday.
I would agree with that. I think that Jamie Murphy for me has just looked quietly impressive, and he's still finding his feet, but he looks like what he is, which is a guy who's come from a high level to Scotland, and you can just see in his movement and his touch and his reading of the game that this is a guy who's been 5-6 years playing at a higher level, and the Championship in England is a higher level than the SPFL. Is just a fact, it is. But I think that you can see what he brings to the team. I think Windas's confidence is high, and I think Candeas, who I've liked with the exception of really the Hibs game and maybe a period of a week or two round about that, I've liked all season, but I think the last month or so he's taken his game again onto a different level. So for me, they kind of pick themselves currently, and they have the jerseys until there's a reason to replace them. What we discussed at the start was Josh Windass wanting to maybe drop deep and try to be a playmaker, and Graham Murty had mentioned last night that's not what I want him to do. I want him further forward, getting on the end of things, and he needs to learn. And this does seem to be something that can happen with certain players, that they get in their heads that they are, I don't want to say better than they are, but that they have a skill set that's different to what they have. And I think Wayne Rooney was a good example of this, where he was forever dropping back and trying to hit passes, and managers would say, I don't want him there, I want him further forward where he can hurt teams. And he kind of saw himself more as a playmaker, and they didn't. And even if you want to look for an example a little bit closer to home, is that I think that you've seen it with Nico Crancher, who trying to play that quarterback role when if you're going to use him at all, it should have been, I don't think you can use him at all, as he was memorably described by one of our podders this week as the ghost of Nico Crancher. He should be just behind the striker where he can at least get off the shots, as he showed the other night. And I wonder if Josh Windass is maybe a little guilty of that.
Yeah, I think Josh Windass sometimes strays into the territory of believing that he can play positions and play deeper that's beyond his it's almost his ambition outweighs his current ability. And that's true in all walks of life, not just football. Josh Windass therefore needs the leader on the park to be telling him exactly what it is he needs to keep on doing. So therefore, if Jason Holt's captain the side, or Russell Martin's captain the side, or whomever is captain the side, it's up to those guys to make sure that's happening, and to make sure that he's not dropping deep, and to make sure that he's hurting them where he needs to hurt them. It's also up to the likes of Jamie Murphy, etc., alongside him. These guys, and we've discussed it quite a lot in pods recently, that we're seeing Rangers as individual units being infinitely better than they've been over the past few months. The right side with Tavernier and Candeas, the left side with Elton John, and now Jamie Murphy. Josh Windass is in there with Morelos, with Murphy, with Candeas. They need to be working as a unit, and they need to keep on just talking to each other. If Windass starts straying, he needs bollocked, and that generally comes from players in the park.
The bench we mentioned earlier, suddenly from being, some of the benches towards the end, just before the winter break, were functional. There was nobody. There were players there in case somebody got hurt and you had to put somebody on, but there was nobody that was going to be a game changer. But now you are looking at Docherty, you're looking at Cummings, possibly even the likes of O'Halloran, Halliday, whatever. Suddenly you at least have options that we didn't have even 4 weeks ago.
Well, we've got, so add Herrera to the mix as your
why
big lump of wood up front.
I'm sorry. I'm look. Don't want to criticise. I'm not seeing much at all there. I'm not.
But in terms of he was it as a kind of forward line sub. Now it's not just him, is my point. So you've got him and Cummings, you've got Docherty, you've got other guys that are going to end up coming back into the fold, like Dorrans, like Jack, like guys coming back off a loan. Your Hallidays, your O'Hallorans. Joe Dodo appeared from nowhere last night and got game time. This has got to be good, because previously we were relying on guys like Aaron Nemani from Manchester City, or at least his young brother that they sent up, and you were almost getting to the stage you were just hoping that we weren't getting an injury prior to the new year.
Yeah, but that was the case. We were just decimated. So, okay, Hoggy, prediction time?
I think we will keep a clean sheet and we will win 2-0.
I'm going for a hard-fought 3-1. I think it'll be a game that they're in for a while, but I fancy us to be a wee bit too strong for them on Saturday. So fingers crossed that you and I are right about John McGinn and he doesn't turn it to play like a kind of Franz Beckenbauer with a spottier face. But that is definitely something to look forward to. Going to Ibrox and a big game. The place is going to be buzzing, and I think can't wait. Just genuinely can't wait for it. Really looking forward to it, and it's a good opportunity to keep the momentum going and show what this side's about. I fancy Jason Cummins to get a goal, even off the bench.
It's written in the stars, and we all know that when he does score, he will keep it really low key and respectful to his former employees.
Oh yeah, I mean obviously.
By sliding on his knees,
getting it right fucking up them. Yes, no, I agree. I'm so looking forward to seeing him start at Easter Road. I think it'll be hilarious, and I do think he'll do them a bit of damage. Okay, folks, that's pretty much it from me and Mr. Hogg today. Just to tell you a couple of other things, a bit of housekeeping before we go. Firstly, that in your feed here, another podcast will drop in over the weekend. It's called The Whistleblowers. It's another one from the Playback Media stable. It's an English podcast, English-based podcast, and it's about the Premier League. But this week they invited me on as a guest, so that's why you'll be getting it. Also, towards the end of it, I kind of pointed out to them a few home truths about Scottish football and who the biggest club are, etc. And it's an interesting listen to hear how people out with this kind of little narrow parameter see us, and of course it's all positive because they see us as a big club who got in trouble and came back. Don't listen to people who tell you fibs about Rangers. You can also, if you are so minded, go and see me on RTV, actually not RFC, Rangers TV, because a couple of months ago they do a series called Games of Our Lives, where they ask people, various fans to go in and pick 10 games out that meant a lot to them over the years, and I was one of them, and I went along and did it, and it's a wonderful piece, not because of me, it's beautifully put together by the boys at RTV, and that I think sparked a couple of rumours, Hoggy, that I am in fact working for the club.
That I have to say, and let me give my opinion on this, David, because others may not believe it if it's your words.
Yeah.
The whole notion that the club would wish to employ, they might do now, right? They might wish to employ you, but you'd have no wish to go. The whole concept that the club would want to chase a guy who, for 15 years, pointed out every fucking flaw going, actively in the media and basically called them arseholes, is tinfoil to the extreme.
It would just be such an odd way of trying to get a job. That what I'm going to do is I'm going to point out the flaws and criticise, Dave King and before that Murray, etc. But the Blazer chaser idea is an interesting one. But no, I don't work for the club, nor do I wish to. If the club ever asked me to do something for them, if it's reasonable and I can help you, like youth development or whatever, I'd be happy to. But it's I don't want to put out the party line kind of thing. I've never been interested in doing that. I'm the wrong guy to ask for it. And I quite like the fact that I'm independent. And I think that over the years I've built up a level of trust with you guys listening to this. Even when I was in the RST, I think that even if you disagreed with me, you kind of got that it came from the heart. And I wouldn't want to trade that. And also the fact is, a very important point that I think should be mentioned, I have no skill set that would be valuable to Rangers. So,
honestly, the whole notion is like suggesting that I'm going to be Mark Warburton's next agent.
Yes, exactly. It's exactly like that. You know, and that guy's called me a cunt repeatedly. I know. You know, I love Rangers very much, but I think that they need better people than me to take them to where I want them to be, selfishly. So, no, I do not work for the club. But all that remains for me to do is thank our executive producers in London, Mr. Mike Lee and Mr. Paul Myers, to tell you if you do like this show, then please give our subscription services a try. It's on patreon.com. You go to Patreon, that's patreon.com/Heart and Hand, and you will get all manner of goodies. I mean, the content we're putting up there is ridiculous. Only $1.99 per month, and you will get hours and hours, literally 3 shows a day about Rangers. So if you're fed up with the mainstream media, hear Bears talking about the club. And it's not just the day-to-day stuff endlessly, although we do cover that, but we look back on the history. Hoggy's involved in a couple of shows at the moment.
Yep, we are chronicling the Advocat years in some fine forensic detail. We'll probably finish that in about 2021, and it seems to be going down quite well.
Yep, millennial Bears are younger Bears who go over the decade of the 2000s. We've had Ian McCall from the Founders Trail on to talk about, you know, the very old days, the gallant pioneers. We've got Happy Jack and his fantastic looks at certain players. We've got so much, I mean, literally tactics shows where we get guys who break everything down to the granular level, previews of upcoming matches, you name it, it's on there. And there's more and more appearing all the time. They don't all feature me, so if you're sick of my voice, and I don't blame you, go there and you will get loads of fresh voices. The Time Capsule with Martin Ramsey. Martin was born to do this fantastic show, which takes a game and looks at the year it was in and the context and everything. It's really, really good. It's very entertaining. It's $1.99. Try it for 1 month. If you don't like it, I'll make it right. But that's it from me tonight. I'd like to thank my guest, Mr. Ian Hogg.
Pleasure and a privilege as always, and here's to a good weekend.
And I'd like to thank you all for listening. I really do appreciate it. My name's David Edgar, and I'll talk to you again soon. Cheers, bye.